Hello and welcome back to the Live for Today, Plan for Tomorrow podcast. This is Gabe Bodner, your host, and I am very happy to be here today with Duane Duggan. Duane, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Gabe. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for being here. So Duane, you and I have known each other for several years now and crossed paths throughout the real estate community here in Boulder. And you've written a couple of books now. And I've got a copy here, Realtor for Life, your first book that you wrote, which is a fantastic read.
Do you have a copy of the other one in your hand yet?
I don't have it yet. Not yet.
I got it right here. So.
There you go. The Velocity of Wealth. I've got it on my screen, but thank you. The Velocity of Wealth with Duane there. And so, Duane, I know you've been a realtor for 100 years with RE/MAX, literally. And
not
joking,
quite, but
not quite. But no, I know that literally a realtor for life.
Right.
But if you want to just tell our listeners kind of a little bit about yourself, that would be fantastic.
Sure. I started selling real estate in 78 after going to college with a intent to get a degree in real estate, which is actually quite rare. So real estate investing became a part of my blood very early on. I was originally an accounting major and discovered that I was more of an idea person rather than a numbers person. And it's a good thing I married somebody that really likes numbers. So, because I am not a bean counter, but I have a lot of ideas relative to real estate and basically in how to create wealth. And the first book that you showed, I did in 2015. And that was kind of the point where my career was winding down in real estate. And I don't know if any of you have read the book. It's called One Word by John Gordon. And what this book is you read the book, and at the end, you come up with a word for the year. And that guides your year and what you want to accomplish in that year. So in 2015, after reading that book, my word was significance. And as you wind down a career, it's like, well, what can I leave for the industry, for my clients, for my family, relative to being significant after you're done with a long career? And that's what prompted Realtor for Life, because I wanted realtors in general to know what they could do to help their clients and their own families, rather than just buying a personal residence, because there's many, many other ideas relative to real estate that can help them create financial freedom for them, their families, and their clients. So that was kind of how things got started. And then after Realtor for Life was around for a while, I realized that I wanted to let the general public know about a lot of my ideas rather than just targeting to realtors. And that's what prompted the Velocity of Wealth to appeal to the general public, the consumer. The word of the year that I had for this year of 2024 of getting the book done was execute, which meant, get it done, because especially once you get into retirement and you're comfortable, if you don't get up in the morning with a purpose, you got to execute and get things done and move on. And that's what prompted the book to get done. And also with your help, Gabe, hooking me up with the right people to finish it up. That helped a lot, because as an idea person, I got the ideas, but I didn't have the contacts to finish the book up. And that's what you helped me with this year. So that's what I'm really excited about getting it out, because it's already got some good reviews of people that it's helped. So.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that background. And with that being said, yes, we have Ginger to thank of Edgy Marketing for helping both your book and my book get on the shelves, right, and helped us both become top sellers, as a matter of fact.
There you go.
So congratulations to you on that, by the way.
Thank you. And you too. I think we both have a mission that we want to help people with their financial future. And that's a great way to do it. So.
Absolutely. And so that's a great segue, by the way, Duane, into ultimately, I know you said with your first book, Realtor for Life, you want to educate realtors, right? And helping educate realtors, and I've read this one, to understand how to be a realtor for life and how to incorporate leverage, right? And how to understand the value of real estate. But again, with this book, I believe you and I come from a similar place of wanting to educate people, as you said, and empower people with knowledge. So talk to me maybe a little bit about kind of that why, right? Why did you really ultimately write this?
Well, I saw once, Warren Buffett said, and I think that's one of the first quotes in the book, that if you don't figure out a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. And that's pretty true. When you look at the content of this book, if you asked a group of high school students graduating from college, Do they know the content that's in this book? I would say that probably pretty close to 100% would say no. One of the big concepts that you and I have talked about is the rule of 72. If you asked a group of graduating high school kids, what's the rule of 72? How does it apply? What's the concept? I would venture to guess that almost none of them would know what it is. And it's a big thing that can help you be financially successful in life, knowing that one simple rule. None of it is very complicated. I don't really view myself as an author. I kind of probably write at about the 5th grade level. All these concepts are so simple that you just need to apply them. And then the sooner that you know about it, the better it all works out. So back to the why, again, the more I can get young families, people with young kids. Amanda just told me today, Amanda DeVito, when I met with her, she is going through this book with her 5th grader. Can you imagine all the concepts that are in this book if you knew were in your head by the time you were in high school? It's amazing. And what came about, it brought me some memories back of my 6th grade teacher. I didn't really realize how much of an influence he had on me. But Mr. Gardner had the whole class buy one share of stock in McDonald's, because, at 6th grade, you could relate to that, and Frontier Airlines. And he showed us how to invest, monitor stocks. This is when I was in 6th grade. So this was like 1966-ish or so.
Wow.
But to get that education or that investment mindset early on, I think is important. So relative, again, to the why of the book, if this book got in the hands of, at least high school kids and started the concepts in the book at the high school level, it would literally change their life if they start soon enough. I mean, you can still do it later in life, but the more time you give yourself, the better. Because when I started in real estate, a baseline sub house, which was 1,000 square foot, 3-bedroom ranch in Boulder, sold for $27,000. And I had this one of my first clients, when I was showing houses, says, there's no way they're going to go over 30,000. There's just no way. And today they're approaching 800,000. And so it's something that, again, that if you start earlier because you found out about it sooner, to own real estate and own a piece of America, that you'll do better in the long run.
Absolutely. So I love that. And so, first of all, I also think I read somewhere that you had written down that you believe the educational system in America is failing our younger generation, ultimately, on how this works, right? How the math works, how leverage works, and the rule of 72 that you mentioned, right? And the power of real estate.
Well, the thing that scares me about today in life is that, the kids are trained to rent a scooter, and then they get a little older, they might rent an Uber, then they rent a car. They don't buy a car anymore. They rent their first apartment, they rent their first house, and then now you can rent your forever home because corporations are building homes to rent. And so when you look at that, the educational system is training them to become workers and to have to continue earning to pay rent on every part of your life and be happy about it. Okay. And so this book is all about, you still need to be an owner to create wealth. As I said a few minutes ago, to be wealthy in America, you want to own a piece of America. But the world is trying to train young people coming up to be a worker, rent all their stuff, and be happy with it. And so that's one thing that, again, as far as my word when I first wrote Realtor for Life of being significant, I hope that if this book gets in the hand of some young folks, it will change their life for the better financially, especially down the road.
Absolutely. I think it will. And I hope that it gets in the hands of many thousands and thousands of people to help educate people, as you said, the power and leverage concepts and the power of real estate overall. I mean, to consider a property that was under $30,000 and now is $800,000.
I never would have dreamed it would get to that point. So I know
Never.
Some people ask, well, if it's 800 today, is it going to continue at the same pace? Is it going to be $3 million starter house in Boulder down the road? At our age, Gabe, we're not that far apart. I'm a little older, but, that's where my son, who's in the real estate business, Timmy, he can be more effective because an $800,000 baseline sub is what it is. And to me, it's like shocking, how can that be? And so it's hard for somebody like at my age to convince, 800,000, that's fine. It's going to be 4 million down the road. And it might be, but the younger generation can probably more likely believe it than me. Because it is hard to believe, but the way it's going and has been, it probably will be. So.
Well, it is. And so I run these numbers all the time for clients, right? And I work, as you know, in the reverse mortgage space and clients who have owned real estate for many years, folks in their 60s and 70s and 80s, and they cannot believe that values will continue to go up. As you said, for your client who didn't think it would ever go above $30,000, right? And we're talking about median home prices that are around $1 million today.
Right.
Right. And based on the rule of 72 that you referenced, and let's just be clear, that rule of 72 is such that if you take the growth rate or interest rate, right, and divide that by 72, that's how long your investment is going to take to double.
Right. So with the formula you just described, at 7% increase, it's 10 years, it'll double.
10 years, it will double.
Coincidentally, the appreciation rate on properties I've owned since the late 70s and 80s in Boulder over time. Obviously, during the 80s, we had layoffs and the oil glut, and the appreciation rate was probably zero, if not a little bit downward. But then it was offset by 20% a year appreciation. When you look at the long run, like that little baseline subhouse, 7% a year is what it's averaged over the last 40 years.
So average Boulder County, not Boulder County probably, but Boulder proper, you're saying over the last 20 plus years, we've seen an average of 7%.
Right.
And if
using that little baseline subhouse, because, they're pretty standard, 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom, 1 ranch. I mean, it's harder to look at like all the customs and houses, but these kind of give you a good clue of what the bottom or the entry level real estate has been doing for the last 40 years. So. Yeah.
Now, with that being said, National Association of Realtors has been tracking through Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, if I'm not mistaken. So an average nationally appreciation rate of closer to 4%.
Right.
And even if you take a low rate of appreciation of 4% and apply that, that means that your investment will double every 18 years.
Yep.
So if you buy a house at 22 years old, right, by the time you're 40, that house is going to double in value.
Right.
Why wait till you're 40 to buy a house? I mean, let's just be clear. That's the first and foremost thing. So I think we start talking about, appreciation rates. So obviously that's one of the key increasers or key factors when it comes to the velocity of wealth and wealth creation through real estate, right? Talk to me about some other key factors or increasers.
Well, appreciation is obviously one, but it's also ties in really close with leverage. Because if you buy, we'll just keep the numbers real simple. If you buy $100,000 house and it's going up at 7% a year, that's what it is. But if, let's say you have $100,000 and for our purposes of our example, you put $20,000 down and you buy 5 of them. And so you have 5 $100,000 houses going up at 7%. Then it's like adding all that money to a savings account, but you used somebody else's money to create that increased velocity. And so the fact that you can use other people's money, i.e. the banks, to buy real estate is called leverage. And then the more you own in value, the more you have going up at whatever real estate is appreciating at. So leverage and appreciation are close together as far as the benefits. And then next, really, like once you become an investor, like if you own a single family home, it's more of a liability on your day-to-day life because you got to maintain it, pay the mortgage payment and stuff. But what's funny is like when you make a mortgage loan application to a banker, they ask you for your assets. Then you list your house and your car and maybe your stuff. But in my point of view, for your own personal financial statement, as opposed to the one you're doing for the bank to get your first home loan, is that you consider those all as liabilities. Because if it's not making you money, then it's really a liability instead of an asset. So what's an asset? It's a property you buy and rent out. One of the ideas to increase the velocity of wealth as a young person is to use FHA financing to buy a 4-unit. Okay. And you can get in, and if you live in one of the units, you can get in with 3.5% down. So is that an asset or a liability? I consider that to be a quarter liability and 3/4 asset, because you're renting to 3 other people that rent the 3 other units. That part of your investment is an asset, and the part that you live in personally, where you have to pay your share of the mortgage payment, your share of the utilities and such, that's actually on your own personal financial statement, the liability. But what does that do? Like, to keep math round again, let's say that you could buy a really nice condo for $400,000, or you could buy a fourplex for $400,000. And so down the road, you have income coming in off of 3 of those units. So like 10 years down the road, you've had 10 years worth of income coming in on 3 units, and you have a $400,000 asset going up, we'll say 7%, just for example, but you've had all that other money coming in to support it. So in the long run, it's created velocity in your wealth by having other people pay the rent to help pay your mortgage. So just another idea to increase that.
Yeah, awesome. So one of the things I want to talk or touch on was the leverage piece, right?
Okay.
That you talked about. So you took this $100,000 investment, and let's say you could go buy that house with cash, and it appreciates at 7%. Sure, you're making 7% on your money,
Right.
but the return on your investment is significantly a lower rate of return if you bought that house with cash,
Sure.
than if you put 20% down and you're getting a 7% return, right?
Right.
Because now all of a sudden your ROI, or your return on investment, is based on the $20,000 down payment versus the $100,000 down payment. Because the reality is that house is going to appreciate at market appreciation, regardless of how much you put down. So arguably, the lesser you put down will provide you a higher rate of return. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly right. In fact, when I was in college, I learned about this thing called internal rate of return, because there's all sorts of ways to analyze investments. One is like the gross rent multiplier, which is price compared to rent. One is the cap rate, or the NOI, which is the net income compared to the price you pay. There's cash on cash, which, like if you buy a Boulder single family house at $700,000 and you put 30% down, that's $210,000, and it breaks even on the rent. That's almost zero cash on cash return. But anyway, back to my original point of what internal rate of return is. It's like when in college, when I learned about it, it was all done manually with a calculator. Now you can go to like landlordsoftware.com, and there's other ones out there where you just put in all your numbers and it analyzes the rate of the return. And so when you're looking at an investment, you put in like the price paid. You put in the price that you think you'll sell it for 5 years down the road based on what you think the appreciation rate has been. You put in factors like what would you rent for it today, or what would it rent for today? What will it rent each year as each year goes by? Will it be a 3% rent increase each year? You put all that in, you put in an estimate of expenses, and then you put in your estimated tax bracket when you go to sell it. And then the computer, with all those factors considered, will give you the rate of return essentially after tax, because it considers whether you paid the tax, how much it went in value, what you got in rent, how much you spent each year to maintain the property. So it gives you a real true rate of return. And for real estate, you really have to look at each property that way to get the true comparison to, say, that simple 7% appreciation rate we were talking about. What's the true return once all those factors that I just listed? What is that return after all those factors are considered?
Yep. So getting back to one of the first things you said, and quoting Warren Buffett, right? Unless you can figure out how to make money while you're sleeping, you're going to continue to have to work until you die ultimately.
Right. Especially if it's that rental attitude of what a lot of the younger generation are being exposed to. So,
well, rent is a fixed cost that generally goes up over time. So I shouldn't say fixed cost, but an ongoing cost, a recurring cost rather, that is you're obligated to that for life. as opposed to at least a mortgage that if you pay down your mortgage just through monthly payments, at some point you could potentially pay that mortgage off, maybe in 30 years, but at some point you could pay that off and be left with simply paying the taxes and insurance on that property,
Right.
and maintenance, of course, but that's going to be far less than any rent payment in 30 years from now.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
But the idea that I love the concept of buying rental property. I personally, my wife and I own rental property. And the idea that this is a way to create passive income, right? So
Exactly.
passive income such that, yes, you're making income even when you're sleeping, right? That's passive income. That's the idea, the mailbox money, passive income.
Right.
So some of the strategies that I know you and I have talked about before, right? Buying a multifamily home, buying rental property, getting more doors so that somebody else is paying the mortgage, paying your expenses. And over time, that ultimately can offset your expenses and then create some income. What other strategies, maybe in your new book here, do you talk about that listeners can really kind of incorporate outside of just buying a rental property, or other strategies to buy rental properties, maybe?
Well, a couple of the accelerators in your wealth. Again, we talked about appreciation and leverage so far. The next one, as an investor, you get this thing called depreciation, which is money you don't need to spend in order to get a tax break. Generally, for beginner investors that might own up to about 4 units or so, there's limits on the amount of depreciation that you can take. And so, like for a person making $100,000 a year and has 4 rental properties, the depreciation rules are perfect for that. Once you make $150,000 gross adjusted income, your ability to depreciate gets phased out. Okay. Now, there is a thing called, if you start buying a bunch of rental properties and you put 750 hours of your time over a year into taking care of your rental properties, you can become what's called a real estate tax professional, or real estate professional tax-wise. And that allows you to remove the limits relative to depreciation. There's a lot of paperwork. You need to visit with your CPA about that. But once you get to the point where you might be at that level where you're making 150 gross income from your job, you got 4 rentals, and all of a sudden you find you're not getting depreciation benefits, it's time to check that out. Or is it time to make all your real estate investments an LLC where the depreciation is carried over into the K1? Okay, so not to get too complicated in our brief time together, but you want to visit with your CPA when you start buying rental property to figure out how to best to treat it tax-wise. So again, as an accelerator, if you're saving money on taxes, that increases your wealth because you're not paying as much to the government. So that's depreciation. Now, one thing I call as a super accelerator would be investing in real estate using your IRA. And I found out about this in 2005. And if I would have known it when I started my career in the 70s, my whole portfolio would have been different because I would have done it as much as I could, investing in real estate inside the IRA. Because what happens is, and how it makes it a super accelerator, is that when you have a property owned by your IRA, goes up in value, you sell it, you don't have to do a 1031 exchange. All the money goes back into your IRA tax-free. You get rent coming in, comes into your IRA tax-free. Now, if you find out about this when you're young enough, you could set it up as a Roth IRA. So then when you pull it out, when you're ready to, you don't pay taxes then either. So like if you're avoiding taxes going in and going out, then that makes it a super accelerator, and you don't have to follow the rules of a 1031 exchange, because you can sell it whenever you want, put the money back in your IRA, and find your new property whenever you want. You're not subject to the 45-day identification rules and the 180 days to get it closed rules. So it's a pretty powerful thing. And again, it's been okay to do this since 1978. Most people, when they call their financial planner and say, I want to invest in real estate using their IRA money, they say they can't. They might be able to invest in a REIT or something like that, but not to individually own ownership. And through their particular brokerage company, that might be the case. But you can do it personally if you set it up as a self-directed IRA. And so another thing that's come about since about 2005 or so is that you can get a loan to your IRA to buy property. Back in 1978, that didn't exist. But now you can go to like an entity in the Boulder area. It's called First Bank. Well, they will do the non-recourse loans that are required. You can't go to your typical 1-4 Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac lender to get the types of loans for your IRA. But once you make that package, it can be a pretty powerful tool down the road. So
that's fantastic. So self-directed IRA funds, and
right.
IRA, for those who don't know, individual retirement account, right? And that account is an account that you can put in pre-tax,
right,
that grows tax deferred, but a Roth IRA, you pay taxes up front and then grows tax free.
right.
And you're saying, say that again?
And you pull it out tax free.
And you, right. And you can pull it out in the future without having additional income taxes because you paid the taxes up front, which I like to say you're paying on the seed,
right,
but you're not paying on the growth or the harvest. Exactly. Right. Yeah. So the Roth IRA is in general a great investment strategy if you meet the income limits and so forth. But to be able to buy real estate utilizing an IRA is a fantastic way. But people do have to know what they're doing. They do have to have a qualified account manager with
and
such.
Just real quickly, as far as getting loans in general, it takes about 35% down to buy it. So it's a little more than, the 5 or 10% down rule. And then like First Bank, one of the key things they look at is what's left in your IRA after you buy it. And so like if you buy a little rental property and you have $5,000 left in your IRA after you've bought it, got a loan from First Bank, and then a $20,000 roof problem comes up, your IRA has to deal with the roof problem. So they look at how much is left. Does it have the ability, does the IRA account have the ability to fix a problem that could come up? If there's nothing left, then they probably won't do the loan.
So that makes sense. So again, this IRA has to be, or is the owner of the property, right, is the borrower on the loan. This is the entity, right?
Exactly.
That is owning and managing the property, similar to when you talk about an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, which is this company is owning and operating that property as a business.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Versus you as an individual. So great strategies, great conversation by all means, lots of options for people to invest in real estate. By all means, working with a realtor, and by the way, we're just coming out of this August 15th, August 17th, lawsuit, right, that changed compensation rules, which I've had a couple conversations on this podcast in the past now about that, and talking about justifying compensation for a realtor. Holy cow. I mean, working with someone like yourself, Duane, or Timmy, who understands these things, it seems to me very, very clear, very quickly, that getting paid the appropriate compensation to represent someone on a real estate transaction who has this knowledge and this skill set is easy to justify the compensation compared to someone who just doesn't understand these concepts by all means, right?
Well, and with like the 32 different chapters in this book of different ways you can help your clients or learn about, it's as a realtor, you don't really need that many clients if you have 10 really good ones that listen to you and do all the things in here. You can help them build their own real estate empires. And that's really all the clients you need. And I would say out of the 3,000 homes I sold, that's in terms of having 3,000 clients in my life, I would say I could only name about 10 that really listen to me as far as buying into investing in real estate as a financial plan. And I think a big part of that is because, as American, your parents have told you don't buy real estate because the tenants are going to trash the place, so don't do it. You talk to your financial planner who primarily sells stocks, mutual funds, bonds. Don't buy real estate. The tenants are going to trash the place. Don't do it. And so I think that's the typical American mindset. And for a realtor to say, I don't buy real estate to take care of you financially, that'd be like sacrilegious. I mean, there is no better way. If you own a bunch of real estate in your IRA, keeps going up in value, keeps going up in rent, and you look at a lot of the financial calculators about how much money you need to live after age 65 if you live to 90. Those are all based on depleting your stock account. Obviously, you are getting some return on your financial investments as you're pulling it out for retirement, but not like real estate where it keeps going up in value, rents keep coming in. You're not really depleting your assets you're living on as fast as you would if it was a pure financial investment, in my opinion. So
No, I love it. Let's talk about one more strategy before we wrap up today, which is my favorite, of course, and near and dear to my heart, but utilizing a reverse mortgage.
Sure. You and I have talked about this a lot, and I've learned a lot from you about reverse mortgages. But as a senior, being able to maybe move out of a Boulder house and move to Erie, so you might downsize in price from say $1 million to 500 to keep our mouth round, and you get rid of your maybe small mortgage that might be left in Boulder, and you buy the new one with a reverse mortgage, so you have a lot of equity that you can access and have no payments. That's a pretty damn good way to go about it. So, and then you and I've brainstormed a lot of, there's so many different ways on a reverse mortgage, whether you get monthly payments to supplement your income or a lump sum. And, you can use that lump sum for whatever you want to. You could go buy another piece of real estate and you don't have any mortgage payments on your reverse mortgage. So you have to run the numbers, because does it make sense to have no payments on your mortgage, but you go buy a piece of real estate? Is that going to return more than it would be compared to just getting your monthly payments on a reverse mortgage? But again, your new investment will be going up in value, rents will be going up, but you have to analyze a little closer. And then the line of credit strategy that you explain to people is pretty amazing. So even if you're not going to need the money for anything right away, you can just grow the line of credit. And I'll let you tell them about how it's better to have a high interest rate when your line of credit is growing, right?
Absolutely. No, you're right, Duane. And outside of the line of credit, and I could talk for hours on the value of the line of credit and why you should get it sooner rather than later and what that can do for you. But ultimately, utilizing a reverse mortgage, even on a home to stay in, when you have a significant amount of equity, tying in your principles around appreciation and leverage, you think about this and you go, okay, if I have for again, round numbers, a $600,000 home, free and clear, and all of that equity is trapped and you can't do anything with it.
Right.
But if you get a reverse mortgage, let's say for $300,000, and now you take that 300 and you go buy a second home somewhere or an investment property somewhere, well, now you've got two properties that are appreciating, right? You've got that $600,000 property that's appreciating, and now you've got a $300,000 property that's appreciating, potentially also paying you rent. Right? If you have it as an investment property or an Airbnb or something like that. So the idea that you can utilize home equity from your primary residence and leverage that into another property that you can gain appreciation on both properties simultaneously, it seems like a no-brainer to me.
Right. Well, Gabe, I think like if the general public read your book and my book, and then read those books and then visit with you, or in my case, my son Tim at Remax, to talk about the plan, because I'm retired from day-to-day sales. But I think it makes your head go crazy because you have so many different ideas, and nothing is truly that complicated. It's just a matter of setting the wheels in the right motion. And again, the younger you learn about all this stuff, which why I would love to get this like a class on this in high schools, because if kids knew this in high school and started working on it right away, their retirement would be so much different at age 65 than going to work every day and hopefully collecting Social Security at the end. So.
Well said. And that, as you know, is one of the reasons why I do what I do and why I wrote my book, because I believe the way retirement is done in our country is also broken, as you alluded to, the way our education system is broken. But as we wrap up today, Duane, I really just appreciate you being here, appreciate your knowledge. Thank you for writing this book. I really look forward to sharing it with the world. And with that, if people want to get in touch with you and or have questions for you and your team, what's the best way to do so?
To get in touch with me is just my name at Comcast.net. So Duane Duggan at Comcast.net. And I still look at that every day, but maybe not as rapidly as I did when I was working every day. So.
Fair enough. I know you're on your bike a lot as well.
Exactly.
I look forward to being on my bike with you more and more someday. But for now,
in Boulder, it's like the golf of other communities. There's more business done from people riding their bikes together in Boulder. I mean, how many communities have Wednesday morning velo where you have bike event on Wednesday morning where you have so many riders show up to the tune of 150 to 200 riders. You have to divide up into the type of bike you're riding and how fast you ride. So it's ridden or divided up enough to keep the group smaller. And it's all business talking about it while people are on their bikes. So it's the Boulder version of business on the golf course.
Yeah.
So,
quite remarkable to say the least. But Duane, thank you again. Appreciate
Right,
your
Gabe.
time.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you being here, and look forward to following up with you again real soon.
yeah, we should do a few more of these and talk about a few of the other different ideas. So I appreciate it. And thanks
I'd
for
love
all
to.
your help.
I'd love to. Thank you, and we'll talk with you
Okay.
soon.
Take care, Gabe.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.